render. So .render is the method that we're going to use this afternoon when we actually want to render a web page. We're actually going to send HTML code back to the client for the browser to bake into a web page. So we're going to be using response.render later this afternoon. But just to kind of tee it up, we're going to be dealing with the request and response objects for the rest of the day. Now, the first trick we're going to take a look at are URL params. And this is something that was alluded to yesterday in the intro. I'm going to repaste that into Slack. There we go. So when we talk about params, that's actually short for parameters. I'm going to mute Brad real quick there. Okay. So when you hear the word params, it's just short-term or shorthand for parameters. So parameters is an object that's attached to each request object that we send to the server. And we can send parameters via the URL. We took a look at that earlier. So when you guys did that Google search, remember that it was google.com / I think #, then you had that Q, which stands for query, equals the thing that you're searching for. So that's just an example of one way that we can send extra information to the server via the URL. And that's what we're going to play with now to kind of flesh out our routes and make them a little more powerful. So I'm going to share my screen quickly. I'm going to show an example and then give you guys an opportunity to plug this into your own application. So let me share my screen. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a route at / name. So this name is considered a parameter. And when we see a colon and then like the name of something after it, it's kind of a wild card. So it means pretty much anything at / anything we put after it is going to match this route. So sometimes you need to be a little mindful of this pattern. But let's see what this is going to do for us. So here in my index.js, I'm going to create an app.get. So I'm actually creating a second route here. And this get is going to match :name. So we're going to see in a second, this is when I put localhost 3000 / I can put my name or Schmitty, whatever name I put in, I'm going to grab that and do something with it. And again, this is just a pattern, so we're going to give it a function. The function is going to take request and response arguments. Make sure I put my semicolon there. So I want to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do, which is a great way to debug, I'm going to console log my request, but specifically the params property. This is going to show up in my server logs where you did nodemon.js, index.js. I just want to see what that request looks like, specifically the params property on it. So I'm going to log that to my server. Again, now that we're dealing with node and server-side code, when we type in console log into this file, this isn't the console log in the browser. This isn't the client-side DevTools console log. This is actually the console log in the server that's running. So just something to be mindful of. And then for this, let's do a res send again. But this time I'm going to do a hello plus the request params, and then specifically the name. And the name is going to be the same name that I type into the URL. When it gets passed back to the server, it's going to get passed back as a key of name, and the value is going to be whatever I type into the URL. So let's see what that looks like. I'll save that. Again, if I go to my server, I don't have to stop my server, restart it, because NodeMon is doing that for me. So let me refresh my localhost 3000. And now let me go to, we'll go to Schmitty. And there we go. So now I get a hello Schmitty response sent back. I could put in Mark, and I get a hello Mark sent back. So this Mark, I'm grabbing that from the request object. And if you go into your server, so we put that console log, and we wanted to console log the request.parameters. So that's what we're seeing here. Request.parameters, I have a key of name because whatever I put into this URL is going to be assigned to name because that's what my path, that's how I defined my path. And then the value is going to be whatever I pass into the URL. So I have a name of Schmitty, a name of Mark. Whatever I put in here will work. Do hello Tom, and then it's console logged right here. So this is just an example of URL parameters and how we get a little bit of variety in our URLs.
Can you explain the semicolon in the path again? Or,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the semicolon, I guess you can think of it as kind of a wild card. We could change this to something else. We could also change this, let's say to, first name, for example. Lower path, let's say it's first name. So all this means is that whatever I put in after this / is going to hit this route. So this route's kind of a wild card. So whatever I put in here, let me undo that. This is a little contrived, but I'm going to just put in some garbage here and hit enter. So hello, whatever. If I go down here to the server logs, I'm console logging a key of name, and the value is that garbage that I typed in.
Right.
So in this example, the reason that this is going to really be relevant to this unit is because eventually we're going to do something like go to the user resource, but specifically, I want to see the user with the ID of 2. So let's say that in the database that I'm registered as ID of 2. So when I go here and I type in user /2, my app is going to know, give me the second user resource. Or Eric, let's say that you're in the database that you have an ID of 3. So when I put user /3, the app is going to know, I'm going to grab the user with the ID of 3. So anything with a colon, it gives us a little bit of flexibility. If I've hard-coded, for example, 2 here,
right,
the route is only going to match if I type in myself. So this is really going to come into play once we get authentication, we start adding users to a database, for example. This is one pattern, one way that we're going to have a little bit of variety in our paths, and that's how we're going to match what we type into the URL, how we're going to tell our app to get specific data from our database. It's going to be using very flexible routes like this.
Okay.
I hope that's helpful. Right now, like colon name, it's a little, it's a little goofy. You're probably not going to create a colon name like in your production application, but It's just an example of whatever we define here, it's going to be passed to our request params object as a name. That's going to be the value.
Okay.
And we can see that right here. So this is actually the params object. Just for example, I'm just going to console log the request itself. So this is going to have a lot more information. Let me go back to this. So we did hello Mark. And let's see what that, so notice that now I'm console logging the entire request object. There's a lot going on in that request object, right? And you don't need to concern yourself with all this stuff, but there's a lot of stuff going on with these response and requests. But specifically, I just wanted to check out the params. So if I refresh, and in that case, the params object on this request object, it's simply this. It's name, Mark. So eventually we're going to add more parameters, more query parameters. We're going to be doing that throughout the lesson. But yeah, that's a pretty simple example. Okay, let's go for it.
I was just saying, okay, cool.
Okay. Sorry if that was like a long explanation. So let's take like 2 minutes and give you guys an opportunity to add this to your app. So I'll put this screenshot into Slack. So let's just take a minute or two. Create a route that uses food as a parameter. So I just gave you an example that used colon name. So I want you guys to build one that uses colon food. And then the route or the string that's returned to the user should say, I really love the food that you entered in as a parameter. So take a minute or two and work on that. Give me a thumbs up in Slack if you get that working. And then we'll move forward to two other cool things that we can do in our routes. I'll stop my screen share as well. Cool, let's take another few seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I want to touch on a comment that Christine put into Slack, which is a really, really cool, important concept. So if you guys will look at my index.js, so I just created a food route, or a food parameter route, rather. I'm happy to put this into Slack. But one thing, going back to Christine's point, so she mentions, if you have other routes defined in the file, like Rihanna or greeting from the lab, comment those out for now or leave them in and see what happens. So I don't know if anyone left them in to see what happens, but I want to show you something, that when we're dealing with the routes in this file, the order does matter, and it's something just to be mindful of. So right now I have a :food route and I have a greeting route. So given that food comes before greeting, it's a lot of just pattern matching. So this food route means pretty much anything I put after a slash, / is going to hit this route. It's also going to hit this route because it's the first route in my file. So anything that matches this pattern, this is the route that it's going to hit. So let me go to, when I try to go to /greeting, and again, I have a greeting route, but what happens when I try to go to greeting right now? It doesn't hit the greeting route. It's intercepted by the route that comes before it, which is :food. So my app doesn't know if I'm typing in food, it doesn't know what I'm typing in, and it doesn't care. All it knows is that if I see anything after this /, this is the route I'm going to hit. And it's because this route comes first in priority in the file. Now, if I move greeting above it, that should fix my problem. So if I refresh the page, now when I go to greeting, it's hitting the routes successfully. So it's pretty much, this route is only listening for /greeting specifically. Anything else, if it's a / with some garbage after it, it's going to hit this route. So I can put lamp here, and it'll say, I really love lamp. I know lamp's not a food, but just for demonstration purposes. But that's a really important thing. Make sure that these routes are in the correct order. Sometimes that'll get you into trouble. So if you're having some sort of like wonkiness or why isn't this route working, that's a really kind of a first place to look to debug is, are my routes in the correct sequence? Cool. I'm going to slack out a version of that route just in case you need it, and then I'm going to move forward. Any questions about kind of the ordering of routes? Anything like that? This is also really important when we get to Rails, for example, because the order of the routes do matter. They definitely have a priority.
So what would be the use of, like, I understand the greeting part, that's like, okay, your landing page greeting. Mm-hmm. Would the use of the app.get and then the :food one, is that more like, say they had input something and their name's Mark, and then that's what you would send them to after?
Yeah, maybe if you have your route set up like that. In a production application, you're probably not going to have like, /@ or /:food. Like I said earlier, really it's going to be something like this. You're going to have something like, go to my users resource and show me this specific user with the ID of 2 or 3 or 4. We're just doing, just for demonstration purposes. That's kind of why we have, just /food for now. It's just to demonstrate what these things do. But yeah, in a production app, you'd probably have something like, well, here's even another example. Let's say that I'm on whatever blogging platform that you use. So I log in, let's say I'm on WordPress. So I log in and I'm user number 2. So it's going to grab all the information for me because I'm user number 2. Let me, just for funsies, I'll put WordPress right here. Okay, cool. So once you grab all of my information for users number 2, I want you to go to my blogs resource, and specifically, I want to look at my 23rd blog. Or maybe I want to look at my 21st blog or something. And test this out. Test this out if you have blogs, or let's say that you, I don't know, go to IMDb and maybe you pull up all of the movies for an actor. And maybe you click on each specific movie, and it has like Brad Pitt, / and maybe his ID, / maybe the ID for that specific movie, like World War Z or 7 or something. But in this path, if I were actually building it, it would look like this. I would have users, and then I could plug in, whatever ID of that user I'm looking for. And then I could also look for whatever ID of that specific blog that belongs to that specific user, whatever I'm looking for. So this is kind of where we're going with these routes. This is more of a, probably like a next week type coverage, but this is how these kind of wildcards are going to come into play. They give us, they're also referred to as like dynamic segments. So it makes our routes a little bit more flexible and dynamic. Cool. The next thing I want to take a look at, and then we'll break for lunch, is let's look at query parameters. So I'll put this into Slack. In query parameters, we looked at this earlier. My screenshots aren't playing nicely today. We looked at query parameters earlier when we were doing our google.com search. And I'll come back to that in a second. And I wanted to show you another example of that, and you guys can do this as well. If you want to go to Rotten Tomatoes, for example, let's say that I go to Rotten Tomatoes, and right here in the search bar, let's say that I want to search for all the Batman movies. So essentially, I'm sending a query to the Rotten Tomatoes servers, right? I'm asking for all the Batman movies specifically. So I can type in Batman here, and I want you guys to notice what happens to the URL. So I type in Batman, and then we get some more stuff attached to this URL. Specifically, kind of similar to what we looked at with the google.com example. In this case, RottenTomatoes.com, instead of using a Q for query, it uses search. So websites have APIs. They have different, syntax for their own website internally on how that code has been structured. So for Rotten Tomatoes, for example, when I type in a search query, this is how it's sent back to the server. Search equals whatever parameter I put in. Now, it returned all of the Batman information, but if I wanted to look for Superman or Spider-Man, I could do another search here, or just for demonstration, I could also put it directly into the URL. So search equals Superman. And I get the same result. So whether I submit it through this input box, this is what we're going to look at tomorrow. It's an input box, but it's also a form, right? Because we're putting data into a field and we're sending it to the server. Precisely what we want to look for. So we could use this form, or Rotten Tomatoes is pretty user-friendly, and I can just look at this URL and kind of decipher it. And I can put in, even Iron Man. And then notice the URL actually converts that space to an ASCII character. So in ASCII, a space is actually represented as %20, because when you send requests and responses, spaces don't work so well. So it converts it to, an ASCII character. And then we get Iron Man like that. So this is an example of a query parameter. And so that's what we want to look at next. But we're actually at 1:29, so let's put a pin in that till after lunch. We're doing pretty good on time. So let's just save that till after lunch. I want to respect you guys' time. So I'll stop my screen share. We've covered a lot this morning. So we learned how to instantiate and wire up, spin up a new Express app, which is pretty awesome. So we're going to play around with some parameters after lunch, and then we're going to actually add views to our application, which is going to be really powerful. So any questions before we dismiss for lunch? All right, cool. Have a great lunch. We'll see you guys back at 2:30.
Hey, Mark. Can I ask something very quick?
Yeah, sure.
Just to be clear on the order, so it's always going to take whatever is first, right?
Yeah, the order of the routes. Yeah, whichever route the pattern matches first, that's what it's going to hit.
Okay, but like I never commented on my grading or my Rihanna, but I did take the name because like I can only access if I do dash grading, and then that will be like it's like a different landing page. Is that how it works?
Do you want to share your screen so I can
Yes.
take a look?
Okay, so I just like I did the food, right? And when I had the food here, I will just grab this one because I guess this one is first. But I have the grading and I have the Rihanna, but when like I go here, let's see, I don't know, I just put pizza in here, let's say. So it says hello pizza because it's like grabbing that, but it's not reading, it's not even reading the grading or the Rihanna. although I have them in front of it.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah. So your greeting and Rihanna routes, they're very specific. So those are
Okay.
hard coded. It must be greeting or it must be Rihanna.
oh, I see.
Yeah, if it has the colon, it's kind of a wild card, right? You can
Okay.
put, yeah,
I got it. So I could have all these ones in front of it, and I don't want to have any issue because they're specific. Like this is their unique address. And in this case, I have to be careful that I want, like if this was my last one, I wanted this one in front of it.
yeah, exactly. So greeting and Rihanna, since they're very specific and hard coded, you can actually put those anywhere because the only way Rihanna is going to get that path is going to get hit is if you specifically put /RIHANA. There's only one answer to that route. So
Okay.
that route could go anywhere, but when you have that colon, you need to be mindful of where those are in the.
So in this one, I kind of wanted to comment that one out. So this
Yeah.
one works.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait. I want just out of the greeting. I just put my name. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right. Stay after lunch. Bye.